Hello everyone! Welcome to Be the Good, Rappler's community show. Happy Pride Month sa ating lahat. Ako pala si Pia Ranada, ang head of community ng Rappler who hosts this show regularly. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm really happy that we have this episode today that also focuses on Pride Month and issues with the transgender community. And I'm really proud to have with me two guests who are leaders in the transgender community. They are from STRAP, or Society of Trans Women of the Philippines, and also Transmasculine Philippines here with me today. So I'll let them introduce themselves. I'm really happy you are in the show with us. Please go ahead.
Hi Pia, mahalap alaw. I'm Vashti. My pronouns are she, they, and siya. I am the Executive Director of the Society of Trans Women of the Philippines.
Hi Pia, my name is Alea. I am the Executive Director and Founder of Transmasculine Philippines.
Alright, so we're so happy to have you with us today. Alam naman natin na Pride Month is a time when we really try to amplify the issues of LGBTQIA and of course of yung SOGIE equality bill and all of the other legislation and policies we want to protect the community. So also awareness raising month siya. Obviously hindi naman dapat Pride Month lang limit yung ating awareness raising advocacies, but it's really good to have a time to really talk about these issues and have the rest of society kind of chime in. So I want to start this episode with learning more about STRAP and TmPH. So also for making sure that other people who would need support would know na parang may mga groups like yourselves who can help provide that support. So siguro tell us a little bit about what STRAP and TmPH do.
I can start first.
Yeah.
So the Society of Trans Women of the Philippines is a support group for Trans Pinays. So Trans Pinays are Filipino trans women. And we are also the pioneer human rights organization that advocates for the rights of transgender women. So basically, we have members who check in with us. We have a monthly check-in. We talk about issues that we experience, discrimination, and of course, joys and pleasures of being a trans Pinay.
And for Transmasculine Philippines, it's very similar. We are also like a support group, or we call ourselves a community-based organization. So we're very much consisting of members of the transmasculine community. So that includes trans men, transmasculine non-binary people, anyone who identifies with being transmasculine. And we pretty much help out our community by doing like educational workshops where we teach them things that are related to trans issues, things like transitioning, gender recognition, employment, just anything that, to help the trans men and transmasculine Filipinos kind of find their way and make sure that they have the support that they need to make it in the Philippines.
This Pride Month, is there a specific advocacy that you are amplifying this particular year? Na parang something you're focusing on with regards to the greater movement and the greater causes of the usual Pride Month issues? May mga specific campaigns kayong ginagawa this month?
So for specific campaigns wise, we're engaging with Trans Health Philippines. So it's more of mainstreaming transgender health in the country. So that's one. We're also trying to do some initiatives such as we call it transformative psychological first aid. So we're trying to organize that within this month. Hopefully magkakaroon din kami ng one on gender affirming hormone therapy session, like safely medical transitioning journeys. But we wanted to focus more the conversation with CADB, Comprehensive Anti-Discrimination Bill, or the SOGIE Equality Bill, whichever. Sa bill ang maipasa na.
It's very similar that we are also focusing on, of course, anti-discrimination, but we've also this month have been focusing on kind of strengthening our volunteers. We've been doing capacity building activities to kind of help our members be more involved in the movements of forwarding trans rights in the Philippines. So we're teaching them how to correctly, get involved in grassroots movements, how to build safe spaces in the LGBTQIA+ community, how to really be stronger advocates for the movement of transgender rights.
Okay. So, because the topic of our episode today is really the state of transgender rights, so I thought I would begin kind of the deep dive na into the SOGIE Equality Bill. And yun naman kasi talaga yung overarching parang national legislation that several groups are really seeking. But despite the fact that it was filed as early as 2000, diba? 2 decades has passed. and hindi pa siya nakapasa. So, ang dami palang pang hurdles. Even if like 19 senators out of 24 supported the one filed by Senator Riz Ontiveros, diba? There's still a very loud minority within our Congress that always puts up a fight against it. And this has been a major hurdle for the movement. So I wanted to ask, para sa inyo, because I guess for background and for people who may not know about the SOGIE Equality Bill, it's really seeking to penalize discrimination based on sexual orientation, gender identity and expression, and sexual characteristics. So anything like yung hair cutting policies, right? Things like withholding education or basic services on the basis of SOGIE is something that is penalized by this bill if it becomes into law. So yun lang, just a quick intro to that. But I just wanted to know, para sa inyo, despite nga ang tagal-tagal na ng movement na to, bakit hindi pa siya nakapasa? Like, what is the major hurdle that is keeping this bill from being a law?
For me, is it okay?
Yeah, of course.
So for me, I think the language of SOGIE Equality Bill, or SOGIE SC Equality Bill, or the Comprehensive Anti-Discrimination Bill, aside sa, we call it something sanctions, right? But it's more of really fulfilling. Like, you're recognizing that, there's gender diversity and different sexual orientations and gender identities in the Philippines, and being able to affirm them in whichever spaces in the country, right? And then, yung penalties that comes after. And then there might be other measures to ensure na they might have very negative biases towards the LGBTQIA plus community. There's still space for them to learn and relearn these biases. But going through your questions, I think we see the trend of how religion, I think, has been used to derail SOGIE SC Equality Bill, or CAD, the Comprehensive Anti-Discrimination Bill. So they've been using religious rhetoric, the Bible, to say that, and then use the verses that are very masakit pakinggan, right? Like, it's very exclusionary, and they think that they hold the truth on these issues, even though we say that in our constitution, there should be a separation of church and state, and we don't have to impose these to any other people.
Yeah, for me, I think it's really, they think that the SOGIE bill, or the anti-discrimination bill, would impede on like their religious freedom. There seems to be like this misunderstanding or fear that by us having more rights means that they have less rights. And they also think of it as kind of like a gateway. Now, if we get this anti-discrimination bill, later on we're gonna have same-sex marriage, and that those things that they don't necessarily agree with because of, like we said, like their religious beliefs. They think that just because we just want to be, recognize that we do experience discrimination, and that we are discriminated based on our gender identity, sexual orientation, it means that for them, they'll be punished because they believe in a certain faith. But really what they're being punished or penalized for is the discrimination, which has, nothing to do with religion in the first place. And I also think that it's really just a lack of understanding of what SOGIE means. That's why part of our efforts as transgender organizations is to continue raising awareness of what SOGIE is, and communicating that SOGIE doesn't belong to the LGBTQIA plus community. SOGIE, everybody has it, even people who aren't part of the LGBT community, and that's something that we're trying to help them understand, so that they can understand that we just don't want to be discriminated for who we are.
Yeah. Gusto ko nga i-zero in on a particular statement that I read from a very high-ranking government official in this administration. So si Justice Secretary Boying Remulla in 2022 said that he rejected, right, that the SOGIE Equality Bill, he was saying na hindi yan papasa kasi hindi pa raw culturally acceptable or culturally ready ang Philippines for that bill. And I just thought it was an interesting use of the word culture, because diba, if you actually look into our culture, Philippines is one of the most gay-friendly countries in Southeast Asia, at least. And yung LGBTQI social acceptance is very high, like according to a global acceptance index in 2021. So actually, like culturally, diba, it's pretty much, there is an acceptance. And so I find that the use of culture is an interesting one, like kind of to fall back on that reasoning. I just wanted to get kung ano yung inputs niyo doon, like the cultural acceptance of of a bill like this or of an advocacy like this?
Yeah, it's so funny because barangays organize gay and trans pageants. Like, we're celebrated culturally, and yet they don't give us. So we're only good for mockery, paganda, ganyan, pagpapatawa, spectacle, entertainment. But when it comes to rights, it's like, gosh, I just wanted to share in terms of culture. I mean, of course, we're progressing at some point, but when queer people becomes part of your family, that becomes a different question. So, for example, we had a case where a trans girl, pinalaya siya sa kanyang bahay. This is in Manila. Imagine a trans girl, a minor, pinalaya siya sa kanyang bahay. She reached out to us, and thankfully, nakapunta siya sa kanyang grandmother. And these are, sometimes we feel na we're progressing so much, but also if it happens in our homes, with our families, sometimes, that's also greater challenge for us. How do we extend the love to family members, to our communities, and ensure that everyone feels included and that they're safe in their own homes? Yeah.
Such a challenge.
Yeah, I think that it really does kind of show in all levels that kind of concept that when you're a member of the LGBT community, you kind of have to overcompensate for your queer identity. So you'll see that lots of members of our communities are like honor students or like the best employees in their workplace because they're trying to get the recognition and acceptance and show that please see that my queerness doesn't impede who I am as a person. And, it's really sad to think about that we have to put in that extra effort just to make sure that people will like respect us and recognize us. And even in our own families, like Vashti said, that you'll see that a lot of kids try so hard to be the best student possible, to be the best child possible because they want their parents to be able to accept the part of their identity that is queer. And, I think that the same applies to like society where they only really respect or recognize us when there's something about us that they want to celebrate. Like, for example, Vice Ganda, who is, an icon in the queer community, and she's one of the most loved celebrities. But again, it's also because they love her as a celebrity. They love her as an entertainer, as someone on media, but at the same time, they don't want to grant her the rights that she is also wanting, that we are also wanting. And it's kind of just this uphill battle where we really have to prove that even if we're not, overachievers or perfect people, we still deserve human rights.
Yeah.
You don't have to achieve to get the rights that every human naman must have. I wanted to focus on yung sinabi niyo about trans girls because this even like all young trans people, I think this is something that is really affecting the youth, like mental health wise. And we've heard of a lot of incidents where students really were targeted by discriminatory practices, like yung nga yung sa iris, diba? The fact na may parang rules about hair na dapat you're conforming to a certain look that the school imposes, and then to be excluded from education on the basis of that. Can you describe what is the mental health impact on young transgender people when these kinds of discriminatory acts are done upon them?
It's really awful. And like in our organization, unfortunately, we've lost a few members to suicide. And they were very much like in that age range, they're students, because they experienced that kind of discrimination, not just from their family, but also from their school. We've had members who, because of like their masculine presentation, were, reprimanded or weren't allowed to attend certain ceremonies like graduations or pinning ceremonies. And we even had a member who was told to wear a wig because he had very short hair and he was already medically transitioning. So when it came around that he was supposed to graduate, they wouldn't let him go to the ceremony unless he presented feminine. And, he approached us asking for help because he wanted to be able to graduate wearing the men's uniform, and he wanted to hear his name, his live name during the ceremony. And, we worked together with him and continuously communicated with the school why this isn't okay, because where he was from there was already an anti-discrimination ordinance, and we kept trying to affirm that you can't do this to him because he met all the requirements and it's not fair for him to not be able to attend this ceremony just because of the way that he looks. And there's just things like that. They're happening all the time, especially throughout the academic year. It really ramps up during the ceremonial seasons, graduation, things like that. And it was really, it breaks my heart every time I hear about losing like a member to, mental health struggles, because people really underestimate how lethal it can be. You know, we try our best to help, but sometimes you can only do so much if they don't have acceptance from their family, they don't have support from their school. And yeah, just the discrimination, that's the impact. The impact is that it can lead to something as grievous as suicide.
What is your advice to family members or even close friends of transgender young people who go through this? Parang ano yung best way to help them through? Like, for example, of course, if this were to happen to a young person, diba, the first people they would go to would be their friends and their family. So how should that close circle support them?
That's a very difficult question because I think in terms of support, iba-iba din tayo culturally wise, right? Like, it would be a very different treatment if it's in Luzon, in some highly urbanized context compared to Visayas or Mindanao, right? But I think for me, it's just being able to listen and advocate for them, knowing when to listen and when to really push for inclusion in their communities, in your schools, being there for your children, for your friends who are trans or gender non-conforming, just being the right ally for them. I think, syempre mahirap, no, how to be a right ally. Connect with other queer groups. Ask for help. Ask for support. You don't have to do it in isolation. You know, you don't have to feel so alienated that you're the only one, you don't know how to navigate this issue. So feel free to connect with other queer groups, connect to STRAP, to Transmasculine Philippines, or to other well-known LGBTQIA+ advocacy organizations. That really helps.
Yeah, I would say that I think the best first step is always to get yourself informed, because I feel like one of the biggest obstacles from family members into supporting a child who might be transgender is really like the lack of understanding, and a lack of understanding always leads to fear. And from my experience, like my own family struggled a lot at first with understanding and accepting my transgender identity, but I understood that the fear really came from them also knowing that it would mean that I would get discriminated. My family also just didn't want me to go through the difficulties that they knew that transgender people go through. And I feel like most families also feel the same. And they just make the assumption that if we stop our child from being transgender, then they won't have to be subject to the discrimination, to the harassment, to the violence. When really the correct response is to be supportive, because if you think that it's scary, then it's even scarier without your support. Yes. Because nothing is gonna be able to stop a transgender child from being transgender.
Can I add?
Yeah.
Also, wag mong ilagay sa isang conversion therapy camp ang anak mo. Right? Like, you don't, our gender, sexual orientation, and gender identity can't be corrected the same way as your sexual orientation and gender identity can't be corrected, right? So, it can change over time, right? It happens. But please don't go to your church and try to get them corrected.
May correctional facility.
Yeah, oh my gosh, yeah.
Always lead with love and support. Because, everyone knows that being transgender is hard. And because it's so hard, we need as much support and acceptance and recognition as we can get. So if you have somebody in your circle that is transgender, it's important to let them know that you care about them, that you support them, and that you want to understand their experiences, because we're not looking for people to like give us an extra hand. We just want people to treat us the same.
Hold our hands.
Yeah, hold their hands through it.
Oh, kapit-bisig. I wanted to talk about a particularly sensitive space na highly deliberated, diba? Yung public restrooms, comfort rooms, right? And we know that in the Philippines, there have been ordinances for like all gender bathrooms, gender neutral bathrooms, and dami mga terms. We also know that syempre minsan may parang physical limitations in infrastructure, so some facilities would try to accommodate by allotting a PWD and LGBTQIA bathroom. So I wanted to know, ano yung thoughts ng movement on these options that different establishments would explore, and what is the right way to go about this debate? Like what would be the most you think respectful of all genders?
Yeah. I wanted to, first, before I respond to that question, I wanted to highlight the mental gymnastics that we have to go through when we pass on to that bathroom. So when we decide to step into that bathroom, it took us a long time to process that. And because this is one of the struggles that we do is, are we passing enough to look like,
deserve to go to this particular
do I
door?
deserve this space? Am I passing enough to be this space? Iihi lang naman ako, right? So I think we have to listen to trans people when they say that it's really, really something that they have to brave through just to go to a bathroom. And not every one of us can transition in a most feminine way that you see in media, for example, like how they represent trans people, right? You can't do that. It's very, very expensive. If you're a minimum wage earner, even let's assume minimum wage earner, you can't buy your meds, your trans health meds if you're transitioning medically, right? You can't buy all these gender-affirming clothing kaagad, right? So that one. In terms of bathrooms, I think, just looking at our homes, right? Divided ba ang bathrooms natin at home, right? Like, we already have the practice of sharing bathrooms with other people, regardless of their gender, right? Regardless of their age. I understand why separation is needed. It can be a logistics issue, so on and so forth. But I think let's just use bathrooms as what they're supposed to be used, right? Ihian, make-up room, ganun.
Yeah, and I really wanted to also talk about how it's like so unfair that we have to be subjected to using the same bathroom as PWDs use because, being trans is not a disability. And of course, when we think about using the bathrooms, I don't want to force myself to use the PWD bathroom because what if an actual PWD needs to use the bathroom and then I'm taking up that space because I'm trying to avoid being discriminated in, the men's bathroom. And like Vashti said, like everybody has experience sharing bathrooms with people regardless of their gender because that's how we are at home. And I feel like there's just this, this stigma still that they think that transgender people are, predators and that we're going to bathrooms of our gender identity to harass people when really we're just trying to use the bathroom like anyone else. And obviously, there's a lot of also like on the opposite end, there's also a lot of transgender people who are very much, far in their transition. Like myself, I've been transitioning for years now, and if I went to the women's restroom, I would make a lot of women very uncomfortable. But if it's just kind of, it's not. You can tell that they're not really talking to transgender people when they think about these, these laws, these issues. They're not really trying to understand our community, and rather they're trying to focus on just what's the most sensationalist take on something.
Yeah, because I think in terms of bodies, right? Like, can you really ID, for example, let's just assume, Hidilyn Diaz. If we don't know that she's cis woman, and then she has that, like, because I think one of the arguments that people say is like, you're giving me very high masculine, high testosterone vibes, nakakatakot ka, ganyan. So, but what if cis women would look buff and super hot, right? And they go to that bathroom. Will you be fearful? No, right? But you're just targeting a specific group of trans people in that bathroom just for you to exclude. Yeah. So, because that was an argument that was used in basically in one of the movements in the Philippines where they said that, if you're presenting masculine, then you better not go to the women's restroom, for example. Like,
there are plenty of butch women. Yeah, there are lots of butch women who.
Exactly. So, what kind of gender stereotype are you perpetuating, right?
And imposing on every gender.
Yes. Yeah.
Transgender. So, I actually also wanted to talk about parang ways that we've seen that are good practices and that we could maybe applaud certain leaders na mas more progressive and maybe even amplify certain things you've seen that are supportive of transgender people. Like, what can you name certain government policies or even leaders or kahit sa private sector that you've seen have been really affirming to transgender people, and how should this be replicated?
I have one. Sa UP, they have the policy on use of live names for students and faculty. So you can actually, so if you're a trans person, you can request for your email account and that you can be addressed by your live name and gender, both for the student and faculty. So it's really, really good. And it's not just happening in, kasi before it was in Diliman and then pati sa Los Baños, I think, meron na.
Okay.
So yun, it's a really, really good policy that's out there. I think national law-wise, we have the Safe Spaces Act. So doon outline transphobia is like a protected characteristic. So any transphobic comments in public spaces, you're not supposed to do that. You know, you can be penalized for that. And the good thing about it is it's very, may rehabilitation part. Magkakaroon ka ng gender sensitivity training if you violated it and you've been reported. So it's a really good thing to build communities, right?
Yeah.
I think meron din is there are multinational corporations who provide transgender healthcare in terms of their health insurances.
Yeah.
That's really, really something na I want. Like,
Yeah.
Sino mga yan?
yeah. Meron, I'm not sure, but I know like there are 3 or 4 multinational
I believe
corporations that
one of them was MaxiCare. I think MaxiCare provides on a reimbursement basis, like coverage for gender affirming surgeries, because we've had members who underwent top surgery and then were able to get it paid for through MaxiCare. And I think also IntelliCare is one of the other ones.
usually BPOs are the ones who are very good at.
Yeah, BPOs are very much, very accepting and very, they uplift like their queer employees. I think one is Taskas. They have like a gender neutral bathroom policy. They have a self-identification program where their employees can say, this is my live name, these are my pronouns, and then those are used in all of their front-facing documentation, so their emails, their company ID. So, it's all very affirming of like transgender people as well.
Yeah.
So hopefully, these kinds of initiatives, when we talk about them and see how they really benefit the employees or even the ordinary citizens in that jurisdiction, na sana baka ma-copy pa ng iba. But we need awareness nga that these are actually being done and acceptable. So I wanted to talk about something that I'm sure you both can relate to and hopefully give really concrete advice on medical transitioning, kasi hindi siya masyadong napag-usapan and maybe people are scared to talk about such a, diba? It's a heavy topic, it's very technical, it's very, ang dami mga complicated aspects of it. You've gone through this and I wanted to get your tips, your advice, like what was your journey like, and what did you learn from it, and what can you take from it that could help others going through the same thing?
Okay, I can start first. I started mine in college. Kasi my undergrad before was biology, and then I shifted to a different one, social science one. And then, syempre parang biology, medyo maiintindihan ko kung how meds or medicines work. And so, I got information online lang how to self-medicate, and I realized that I was what is it called? Overdosing myself. There you go. I was overdosing myself. I was using the contraceptive pills, and you're not supposed to use them. But I was overdosing them. So you're supposed to, if one harm reduction practice is you just take 1 a day. But what I was doing is I was taking 3, and then a day, and then I was overdosing myself with hormone blockers. So talagang I think after 3 years, talagang lupay-pay yung katawan. You're always pale, hypotensive ako, and all that. I need to stop. I need to recuperate. And then when I learned, I was working in the HIV sector where we're doing a lot of transgender health work. And then I realized, okay, now I can get back, and then I have these more ways of doing medical transition in a safely manner. So I think that was really, really helpful. So I would recommend that. So we have this Philippine Professional Association on Transgender Health, or PPATH. So please look them up online, or Transgender Health Philippines, or Trans Health Philippines, where they provide information on safe transitioning, medical transitioning. Because I understand that some of these medications that a lot of trans girls use are not really recommended, but because they're cheap, they're the ones accessible and available, yun naman ang kukunin nila. So, at least you know how to, what are your harm reduction practices to ensure na when you engage to this stuff, you are well informed and you know how to mitigate any issues that you might see. Kasi mahal talaga siya. Like, you need to have, for at least for us, 1,500 to 2,000 a month, and then you need to get your labs pa, and then your checkups pa. So it's really expensive for someone who don't have that capacity.
Yeah.
That's why I think one of the calls is to include that in our insurance system, because
Bigat nun, eh.
and this is I think when we talk about universal healthcare, we have to talk about everyone accessing healthcare. I mean, we're paying PhilHealth, we're paying so much for this, right? And everyone should benefit from it. Hindi lang some people or cis people, right? And marginalize other people. So I think our health system should be responsive to the healthcare needs of everyone.
For sure. For me, my journey started in 2021. So I've been out as transgender since 2016, but I only started medically transitioning in 2021 because I wanted to do top surgery first. Because of my family's medical history, I was a bit apprehensive about hormones because we have a history of hypertension, diabetes, and I was worried that if I did my hormones first, that it would, affect my viability for top surgery.
What's top surgery? Can you share?
So top surgery is the surgical procedure wherein transmasculine people have their breasts removed, and then they undergo a masculinization of the chest. So I underwent that in 2021. I paid for everything out of pocket because I did not have any kind of healthcare that would cover it. So I saved up for it for a year before I underwent the procedure, and it was difficult because it was such an expensive procedure. I spent a total of around 170 to 175,000 pesos on top surgery, and that's even considered like a cheaper end. There are some surgeries that cost up to 250,000 pesos, and I was lucky because my surgeon during that time was offering like a promo, so he was offering discounts for top surgery because he's been doing top surgery in the Philippines for a long time, and I was able to do it because my partner supported me, my friends supported me, my family supported me. And after I recovered from top surgery is when I started doing hormone therapy. Gender-affirming hormone therapy, I started 2022, just a few months after top surgery. And I went through, I think, what most trans people are doing now, which is they go through the medical sector where it's like Love Yourself and Trans Health, who offer free consultation on gender-affirming hormone therapy for trans people. So that's how I started, because I did not have the budget to see a private doctor.
It's very expensive.
And, so it's very helpful to have those organizations also. And compared to Vashti, I think our hormone therapy is considerably cheaper. Our hormones only cost about 150 to 300 pesos a month. But our lab tests are also expensive.
Yeah.
We have to do our lab tests every quarter, so every 3 months, to make sure that we're healthy, because testosterone can have quite a lot of side effects if you don't dose yourself properly. And so I see my endocrinologist every 3 months, and I spend about 3,000 pesos every 3 months on the lab tests and the appointment. And I've been on testosterone for 2 years, and it's been great.
Can I also add? Yes, I think there's a very important point that we need to mention, that when we talk about medical transition, there are different types, and it depends on what you want, like what are your needs. So, for example, we have gender-affirming hormone therapy. Then we have top surgery. So for trans women, it's putting if you don't have enough breast tissues, you can put up more.
Breast augmentation.
And then bottom surgery. So for trans women or trans feminine people, it can be vaginoplasty, vulvoplasty, so on and so forth. So having, in the past we call it sex reassignment surgery. So
For trans men, we also have bottom surgery, but unfortunately, it's not locally available in the Philippines. The closest country I think that you can go is Thailand to be able to get bottom surgery.
Yeah.
But it's also like super expensive. I think a million pesos if you based on the
Yeah.
conversion rate to be able to do it.
And then we have facial feminization surgery. Yeah, so I feel like, especially for trans women, trans feminine people, it's very, very expensive because the idea of passing is so, like, this is a burden to all women, right? We're all supposed to look the same way, or look a certain way, look super feminine. And it's so difficult sometimes, especially to those who have characteristics that are considered super masculinizing. So, and thankfully, also just to plug, Strap has our own doctor who helps us, supports us in terms of our medical transitioning. So to those who are listening, maybe you want to join us.
May support, like
Yeah.
a medical professional.
She's part of PIPA, si Doc Amy. So she's very, very supportive. She's a doctor. She provides all these. She provides gender-affirming hormones to trans people and non-binary people. So she's very accessible.
That's great.
Yeah. And if you want, you can visit her.
Where is it? Manila though?
Yeah, I think she's based in Taguig. Yeah. If you want it free, you can join us at Strap. But of course, you need to pay her for her work. You need to consult with her. But rest assured, she's super friendly, trans friendly. Kasi sometimes you also have to choose your doctor, right? Kasi minsan, papasok mo pa lang sa clinic mo, may misgender ka na, tatawagin ka with your legal name, imagine. So, maaning ka. So, parang, why would I... so usually, for example, for me and a lot of the girls, when that happens, we just walk out. So, we've heard a lot who are not able to access healthcare and now nag-deteriorate sila in terms of their health. So, imagine, just because you can't provide gender-affirming healthcare, you exclude people to really getting the healthcare that
You need.
you're supposed to give.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
So at this part of the program, I want to introduce yung isang segment we always have in the Be the Good, which is really to talk about ano nga ba yung mga online conversations that happen around transgender issues and even Pride Month. Kasi ang dami nangyayari, diba? Ang daming events, but even like issues that crop up and get amplified. So we're going to turn to Russell Koo, who's a Rappler digital communication specialist, and he did the social scan on Pride Month, transgender issues, and more. So, hi Russ.
Hi Pia, hi Vashti, hi Matt, happy Pride. So for the spirit of today's Pride, my pronouns are he, they. And before I social scan, I want to give a little bit of trigger warning because some of the comments I'll read can be very triggering, especially those who have trauma, who especially it's an experience in the queer community that we go through slurs or we go through comments that can be very that even though that they are medyo light in nature, can be very trigger and can do a lot on our mental health. So just a little bit of a trigger warning. So I want to start with how the SOGIE bill and other SOGIE related issues, because when I was searching on Facebook and Twitter, the first post I actually saw was from a religious group debating that SOGIE bill is bad for Filipino families. So there is this thing in religious communities na SOGIE bill is not good for Filipino families. And there was also conversations and interactions on recent Senate comments, especially from former Majority Leader Joel Villanueva, which, to go back, he actually presented letters from religious groups to block the debate of the SOGIE bill in the plenary and to put it back on the Committee on Rules after it was passed at the committee level. And even the new Senate President Cheese Escudero said that the bill would need amendments, and he said that measures on anti-discrimination would have a better chance to be passed in the Senate. I also passed through actually a post on Facebook when I did a social scan. It was a photo of a trans woman holding a slogan with her toga saying, "Make PH schools inclusive for trans students in 2023 sa Siliman." For context, it was actually a trans woman pharmacy graduate named Margot Jakiran because she had to avail of a tailoring shop for her toga because the school denied her of the female toga. So for context, the togas there were gendered togas. But after that, the protest led the university to redesign its academic regalia to be more gender inclusive. The viral post was saying that academic gowns are neither political or fashion statement, and there were comments saying that the person hoisted the slogan is papansin and her concerns are quote unquote insignificant and graduation is a sacred program. But others were really quick to point out the context of the photo and why it really matters, especially in the context of Silliman, and how that led to the change into gender inclusive togas. I think Pia mentioned also the ears issue. I actually covered the ears issue. I also talked to the transgender who was forced to get a haircut. Not her real name, but Jen told Rappler that she did her hair as as a sacrifice for fellow transgender students, and she said that the transgender students in the school are losing their voice. So for context, they've long had this problem, even sa first semester, where they had to talk to Iris resident Rogelio Marmadlo, and they had representative from various LGBTQ groups to help them. The dialogue only led to a verbal agreement to allow trans students to enroll for the first semester without any conditions. But the incident still happened, and it went viral on social media. Many condemned the circumstances endured by the student, saying that it was blatant discrimination and oppression. And they said that conditions like these prevent trans people from transitioning properly. I know Vashti and Matthew mentioned that about the conditions that they need to transition mentally, but also the financial cost also. So, and they also said that hair length should not matter in one's academic standing. That relates to Matt's comment na for us queer people, we always have to prove ourselves that we are beyond our sexuality in order to, through academics or through our achievements at work. And people said that no one should impose what one should do with one's body. Another example, in the case of trans men, is also Sina Jake Cyrus. People continue to joke Jake's identity. They continue to use his dead name that he's best known for, and they say that his transition was quote unquote a waste of God-given talent. And it also showed when Jake Cyrus posted his shirtless photo in 2022. And then we also have the hostel issue where Jules Balais, a trans woman in Albay, was harassed by an owner of a hostel in Albay for using the women's restroom. That actually happened last month. So very recent and very right before Pride Month. And the owner even threatened to punch her. And the owner also insisted on calling her a man and using pronouns signifying men. So in the thread, there were replies that said that Jules was seeking, quote unquote, seeking attention, telling her to use the male restroom because she is, quote unquote, violating the safe spaces of biological women. However, many still condemn the comments, saying that we still haven't learned from the incident of Gretchen Diaz back in 2019. For context, again, Gretchen Diaz was denied from using the women's bathroom by a janitress at a mall in Quezon City. And until now, the microaggressions na the safety against transgender people, respect biological women's spaces, these are still repeated until now. I guess the last issue that I would mention before I go to my questions is this is very recent. This started in Pride Month. It's done by a driver of a ride-hailing app, and an LGBTQ plus person posted a TikTok of himself getting uncomfortable by a driver criticizing his gender expression, and that driver even read a Bible verse. Later on, his family heard and saw the news, and his father harmed him physically and threatened to kill him pa. So he's now seeking help for a new place to stay and for protection. Right now, groups such as Pantay are actually helping the person right now. And social media users are calling for the ride-hailing app to be responsible for the safety of their users, call for the training of the drivers, and the passing of the SOGIE bill. So all of these incidents have already continually called na SOGIE bill now or immediately pass the SOGIE equality bill. Siguro I have two questions for Vashti and Matt. Number one, I think Matt mentioned in us queer people would always have to overcompensate. Why do people still call measures like the SOGIE equality bill as special treatment when all we want is equality and to be treated equally as our straight counterparts and heterosexual counterparts? Number two, in the incidents of the hostel issue and the ears issue, there were already anti-discrimination ordinances in the province of Albay and Manila that is meant to protect people from these kinds of incidents. But how come these incidents still take place despite these measures already passed or already supposed to penalize those kinds of violators? So I think I can pass it to Vashti and Matt Muna.
I think to answer the first question, I think the reason why people think it's still special treatment is because it's become normalized for trans people and queer people to be discriminated against. I think they think that that's the norm, that we deserve to be treated that way, to be discriminated, to be harassed, to be discriminated against. And they think that when we now want protection for ourselves because we are also humans, they think that it's special treatment because they think that it's normal that we be treated that way. And I think that, like I said earlier, they have this misconception that if we are granted the same rights, it means less rights for them. And I think that it's a misconception that just because we want to be treated equally, it means that they have to be treated less, but which is not true. We're just trying to, receive the same protection, the same rights, the same treatment as our community members who aren't part of the LGBT sector. So yeah.
Yeah, I also wanted to add that because I think they think that we chose to be like this, right? Like, do we have a choice, that we have options? That okay, now because you choose to be like that, then bahala ka sa buhay mo. So if that's happening to you, that's on you, right?
Yeah.
It's more of that. But what they don't know is how these are structures that are made through a cis heteropatriarchal system. Like it really is about that, and how we use narratives such as biological determinism, diba? Yung assumption na if you are assigned this at birth, you have to be like that. The same way with men, and then merong specific gender stereotypes na associated with that kinds of gender. And it's very restrictive, it's very controlling. Sometimes so when we talk about bodily autonomy, right, that's super really connected to that. And I think because cis or straight people or cis people think that they are in the top of the hierarchy, everybody should conform to that kind of standard. So I think that's why that is the problem. So what is needed is to really mainstream this more. We look at our education sector, make sure that they're using non-discriminatory language. It upholds the human rights of everyone. So we have human rights standards to really hold on to. So I think that's what's promising. So I think we continue to fight. We continue to liberate ourselves from all these mechanisms of control, and we continually engage and advocate. And syempre, as cliche as it sounds, let's love, right? Like love, ganyan.
Yeah.
So second question naman, I think it's really, really good that our LGUs, our local government units, are passing anti-discrimination legislation in their local areas. What is needed now is to amplify those and really disseminate those laws or those ordinances to make sure that everybody understands, right? Like, you really have to build that people-to-people exchange to raise consciousness or share that consciousness amongst to everybody, right? Like, I mean, and then I guess dun na siya magkakaroon ng pangil, and it becomes like a community thing. Because I feel like penalizing people is not really like a very good solution. It just antagonizes everybody. So I think it's really more of just conscientizing ourselves. And if you're so stubborn not to really evolve, your thinking, I think that's on you,
You're
right?
so Neanderthal in the medieval age.
So I mean, what would your God say to you when you're dead, right? Like, you're just spewing hate.
Yeah.
You're a hate machine.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to talk about how it doesn't stop at the ADO. Like, having an anti-discrimination ordinance isn't like the be-all, end-all. That doesn't mean that people are going to be safe from discrimination. We have to talk about the importance of really strengthening the IRRs of the anti-discrimination ordinances, because if you just have an anti-discrimination ordinance but it doesn't have an IRR, then it can't really do much. And like Vashti said, we have to kind of communicate better to people how having an ADO benefits everybody, not just the LGBT community, because then it'll make it easier for people to understand that we're not doing this just for our community. And the same for the SOGIE bill. We're not doing it just for us. It's going to be helpful for everybody that faces any kind of, discrimination based on who they are.
Yeah, and this is a responsibility of everyone. I think we have to be clear that this is not just our responsibility just because we are the ones experiencing these kinds of these forms of discrimination. Kami na yung nasa front and center to talk about all these stuff. No, these are very triggering. We have a very triggering experiences of discrimination, and we need our allies, our partners in the society, Rappler and other news outlets to be there and really ensure that we also don't perpetuate this and hold the line hold the line for gender equality, for substantial equality, for non-discrimination.
Yeah.
And yeah, I actually do agree. Thank you so much for these answers. I guess to wrap up the social scan, there's a lot of encouraging actions by LGUs, by by private organizations, and even local government. For example, Quezon City with its right to care card. So I really do believe that there are still much more we can do, and I think kailangan beyond Pride Month. Kasi I think we always have these conversations in Pride Month, but why are the issues of harassment still taking place? It still has to be long term. So I guess that's it for me. Back to you, Pia.
Thank you, Ross, for the social scan and for sharing also those questions with Vashti and Matt. So, siguro last two na lang before we wrap up this episode, no? Kasi, Ross, you also pointed out all of those instances where nadi-discriminate talaga yung mga transgender people, lalo the young people. So, what would you tell someone right now who is going through turmoil because they went through that? Like, we heard from Ross how Jen from Ears, diba, had to say pa na she felt she had to make a sacrifice for her school, diba? And compromising her own identity for that. So what would be your message to people, especially young people who have to go through that right now?
I think for me, I want to acknowledge how brave they are. I know they are put in a very difficult situation, but I can't really give hope, right? Like, I mean, it's a you thing, but what I could say is that there's a community out there that you can reach out to. So STRAP is here, other LGBTQIA+ organizations are out there. You can reach out to them if you want, if you have the capacity, because I feel like being part of a community really helps. So, for example, for me, I've been part of my own community in the Visayas, in Kapul, and that really helps me build that kind of that strength, right? And then I went to Manila to go to school for college, and that was a bit difficult because there's no trans organization or LGBTQ organization in UP Manila. But yet I get connected with Society of Trans Women of the Philippines, Brenda Alegre, Mikey, Jaya, and these amazing women. And it just clicks, right? Like, oh my gosh, there's this community out here for me that supports me, right? Like, that accepts me and really understands where I am from. So, I mean, iba-iba naman ang lived experience. There's no homogeneous, there's no one narrative of a trans person. But just being able to have a community where at least snippets of those experiences, they also know, they also understand, and they try to make sure to counter those hierarchies. I think that's very, very helpful. So if you're in a place where, in a crisis, emotional turmoil, maybe it helps to reach out. Maybe you can go to therapy. Whatever works for you. Find that mitigation measures that's appropriate for you. But for me, what helps me most is finding my community and making sure that I keep on sustaining that community, because a community is, it's everyone's effort to make sure that that community lives on, passes on, not for the legacy or not for anything grand, but it's for other trans Pinays, trans feminine people, non-binary people, trans women, that, there's an organization that they can belong to and have that sense of belongingness, which they might not be able to find in other places or in other areas of their life.
I would say, like, very similarly to Vashti na...
Bawal gaya-gaya.
Siguro find a support system, because I know that that's really the struggle with being trans. I think a lot of us go through this experience where it's very lonely. It's a very isolationist experience where when you find out that you're transgender, it's the main struggle is really figuring out how you can like find the support that you need. Because when you kind of start out on your journey of being trans, it feels like you're the only person in the world who's going through the problems that you're going through. And yeah, it's best to find community, to find a support system, even if that, it doesn't necessarily have to mean joining an organization and, joining the trans rights movement. Sometimes it's just finding people that will love and understand and accept you for who you are. And of course, to always prioritize like your safety. I think that more trans people need to hear and understand that they don't deserve the discrimination that they face, because I think it's very easy to think that when you suffer as a trans person, you think that you deserve it because you expect it from being trans, but really the answer is you don't deserve that kind of pain, you don't deserve that suffering, and you deserve to be supported, to reach out, to have a community, and reach out to the organizations near you, like Strapped, like Transmasculine Philippines, and of course remember that these things will pass. I know that it sounds very cheesy to say it that way, but I think that that's a key to remember to getting through it, is to remember that there is a way to get through it, that you will make it to the other side, and that things will get better. And it may be difficult right now, and there will always be challenges because that's part of the trans experience. But it helps to know that there are other people who understand what you're going through, and that you can see them have, successful lives. Like, there are so many trans people who are thriving and happy and leading successful lives, and everybody deserves that. And if you are a trans person who's suffering right now, just remember that kami din, pinagdaanan din namin yung mga ganyang bagay, and what we want is to support you through it, and what we want is for there to be a future where it doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah. And trans is beautiful, as we always say. When we live in our authentic selves, there's really joy and pleasure in that. So if that's something that you look forward to, despite the turmoils that you're experiencing, or that might help encourage you, further your trans journey, you can look into that as a positive measure, I guess.
Yeah, the suffering is not because of your transness, but it's because of the people who are against it. Yeah.
So for my last question, I wanted to end on a high note. And kasi Pride Month naman, in essence, right, it's a celebration. It's about being unapologetically yourself, no matter what other people say. So I guess my last question would be, what are you most proud of right now?
Mahirap naman ang question.
The most difficult question for last. Medyo philosophical pa.
Oo. Proud.
Siguro for me, I think it's really about the small wins. As a advocate for trans rights, like to me, whenever I get messages from young trans people saying, I'm so thankful for Transmasculine Philippines because of the things that you guys do, like these little projects that we have done made such an impact on even just like one person or two people. For me, those are still the moments where I feel the proudest. I feel prouder of those rather than when I'm like at speaking engagements or doing workshops or doing events. I feel more proud when I feel like I am really, like touching on the lives of trans people in the community. And I think that I feel most proud of that because I know that that's what I needed when I was at that age. Like when I was a young trans guy, I really wished that I had, adults, trans adults, older trans people to, give me that guidance, to give me that support. And I think I'm proud enough to say that that's something that I'm doing now. And that's basically why I do it, why I've decided to make Transmasculine Philippines, why I decided to continue doing Transmasculine Philippines, is to offer that kind of affirmation, that kind of support, just even in the smallest of ways.
Yeah, so for me, also agree that Pride is a celebration, but it's also resistance. It's a protest, right? It's the first brick that was thrown. So I think it's great to acknowledge that, and we're still continuing to protest for that, right? We need comprehensive anti-discrimination bill or the SOGIE equality bill. We need the legal gender recognition for trans people, transgender diverse people. And I think to answer the question, Pia, thank you for that beautiful question. I am most proud of that we are still here today. You know, as trans people, we're thriving, we're enjoying life. We're struggling, but we're paving through. I think I'm very proud that we're continually existing, resisting, and hopefully fighting for the rights that everyone deserves. So not just LGBTQI rights, but other rights that are needed by everybody in the Philippines. Thank
So
you.
beautiful.
And I
So
thank
beautiful.
you.
Thank you so much for that discussion. I mean, sobrang empowering rin niya to hear, right? That this is still, we're still fighting and we're still proud of what we're doing. So thank you again for giving your time to Rappler today to talk about these issues. And of course, yung ating topic was about rights. So we really want to continue this discussion further. Well, it's not limited to this episode, but really follow through. So if anybody would want to weigh in on our episode today, on our topic, please to go to the Justice and Human Rights chat room in the Rappler Communities app. So it's actually a public chat room on our new app where anyone can go in and discuss with Rappler reporters yung mga issues that they feel strongly about. In this case was really about SOGIE equality bill and other policies that we want to push for. So, but also this month, we are also going to launch a new chat room. So Pride Month, we're launching a gender advocacy chat room. And this is something we want to invite your groups to have conversations there that are super, super important to anyone of any, and the SOGIE sphere that we want to push for equality of all SOGIE. So we really wish you could be there and join us for that. But this was a really great discussion. I'm really, really proud of this episode. So thank you again.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much. So once again, I'm Pia Ranada, Rappler's Head of Community. Thank you for watching Be the Good. See you next time. Goodbye.